Welcome back, everyone, to Season 9. This season, we're diving into the world of the Syriac early church fathers.
Oh, fascinating.
It is. These were the folks who really shaped early Christian theology and biblical interpretation.
Right, and their ascetic practices, too, like their approaches to living a devout life.
Exactly. And for this particular deep dive, we're going to meet someone pretty remarkable from that era, a guy named Jacob Baradaeus.
Okay, I'm intrigued already. Jacob Baradaeus. That name rings a bell, but I'm not sure why.
Well, maybe things will click into place as we dig in. It's important to mention up front that all this incredible research we're about to explore comes from Andrei Mubarak.
Okay.
He's a teacher and tour guide based in Jerusalem. And get this, he's an Aramaic-speaking Christian.
Wow. That's amazing, living in Jerusalem and teaching about the Aramaic roots of Christianity.
Exactly. If you're interested in learning more about his work, you can visit his website. It's www.twinsbiblicalacademy.com.
I'll definitely check that out.
So you've clearly got some questions about this Jacob Baradaeus and why he's such a standout figure.
Definitely, what made this guy so influential, especially in such a tumultuous time?
Well, let's start with the basics. Who was he? We know he was born around 500 AD near Tella, which is modern-day Florence here in Turkey.
Okay.
He had a couple of other names too, Jacob Baradaeus and Jacob Bar Theophilus.
So, multiple names. Was that common back then?
Yeah, it wasn't unusual to have different variations or forms of names used in different contexts.
Interesting. Makes sense, I guess, for different communities or languages.
Right. Anyway, he eventually becomes a monk and later a bishop of Edessa.
A bishop. That's a pretty important position in the church hierarchy.
Absolutely. But it's his role in the Syriac Orthodox Church that makes him truly pivotal.
The Syriac Orthodox Church. Remind me, what's their specific place in the tapestry of early Christianity?
So they're also known as the Miaphysites or non-Chalcedonians. These terms describe their theological view of Christ. They believed he had one unified nature, both divine and human, inseparably.
Right, and that view set them apart, didn't it, from the Chalcedonians, who were the dominant force in the Byzantine Empire.
Exactly. And this difference, this theological distinction, had huge implications for the Syriac Orthodox Church.
Because they weren't exactly the emperor's favorite group, were they?
No, not at all. By the mid-6th century, they were facing a very real threat.
Threat? Like what kind of threat?
The sources actually suggest they were close to extinction.
Extinction? That's intense.
It was. They were dealing with a ton of pressure. It was a combination of imperial suppression from the Byzantines.
Because of their non-Chalcedonian views.
Exactly. And on top of that, they were dealing with internal divisions within their own church.
So it was kind of a double whammy. External pressure from the empire and internal struggles within the church itself.
Absolutely. It's crucial to understand this context to really appreciate what Jacob Baradaeus managed to accomplish. He wasn't just leading a thriving community, he was fighting for its very survival.
So how did he pull them back from the brink? What did he actually do?
Well, his biggest impact was in restoring and reorganizing the church's leadership structure. The sources say he ordained over 27 bishops, 2 patriarchs, and thousands of clergy.
Hold on, 27 bishops, thousands of clergy. That's a staggering amount. And all while they were being actively suppressed by the empire.
It is. And it wasn't just localized to one area. He traveled extensively, covering Mesopotamia, Syria, Asia Minor, and beyond.
He must have been constantly on the move. How on earth did he manage all that, especially with the Byzantine authorities watching?
That's where his strategy gets really fascinating. He traveled extensively on foot, very discreetly.
Okay, makes sense. Less conspicuous that way.
And he had this remarkable disguise. He disguised himself as a beggar.
A beggar? That's unexpected. I mean, I can see how it would be a good way to avoid attention, but it still seems surprising for a high-ranking church figure.
It definitely is. It's where he gets his nickname from, Baradaeus, which actually translates to rag wearer.
Ah, the rag wearer. It's starting to come together now. So I can see how the disguise would help him blend in, but were there any other benefits to taking on that persona?
Absolutely. The sources point to several strategic advantages. First off, it made him incredibly inconspicuous.
Right. Just another face in the crowd.
Exactly. If anyone questioned him, he could play the part of a simple beggar and give misleading information.
Clever misdirection. Throw off any potential pursuers.
Plus, no one would suspect a beggar of being a powerful religious leader organizing this whole underground network.
True. A beggar wouldn't exactly raise any red flags for the authorities.
And the best part, the disguise allowed him to move quickly and discreetly. He could slip in and out of towns, do what he needed to do, and be gone before anyone was the wiser.
So he's got the disguise, the travel strategy, but he couldn't have done all this alone, right? Surely he had some help, some allies, or at least some powerful figures who turned a blind eye to his activities.
You're absolutely right, and this is a crucial part of the story. He had the support of Empress Theodora.
Theodora, the Byzantine empress. But I thought the Byzantines were cracking down on the non-Chalcedonians.
They were, but Theodora actually sympathized with the Miaphysites.
Oh, interesting. A bit of a conflict of interest there, maybe.
Perhaps. But it worked in Jacob's favor. The sources highlight how she was instrumental in getting him consecrated as a bishop.
Ah, so she gave him the official authority he needed to carry out his work. That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. It happened in either 543 or 544, and the consecration was performed by Theodosius I, the exiled patriarch of Alexandria.
Okay, so with Theodore's backing, he had the authority and probably some level of protection too to start rebuilding the church structure. And then with his travels and his disguise, he was able to reach all these far-flung communities.
You've got it. So what was the end result of all this? Did he manage to save the Syriac Orthodox Church from the brink?
Well, the sources say he played a key role in establishing a distinct Syriac Orthodox Church, completely independent from the Chalcedonians.
And that's the church we know today, right?
It is. And in a testament to his lasting impact, it became widely known as the Jacobite Church, named in his honor.
The Jacobite Church, what a powerful legacy. So he clearly succeeded in ensuring the church's survival. But we also know he participated in dialogues aimed at reconciling the Chalcedonian and non-Chalcedonian factions.
Right. So he was committed to his own church's survival, but also seemed open to finding common ground with those who had different beliefs.
Exactly. Did these attempts at reconciliation work?
Well, the historical record indicates that while he engaged in these discussions, they didn't really bridge the fundamental doctrinal divides.
So no major breakthroughs.
Not really. But it does reveal an interesting complexity to his character. He was clearly a staunch defender of the Miaphysite theology, but he also saw value in dialogue and understanding, even if it didn't lead to immediate unity.
A man of both conviction and a desire for dialogue. It adds more layers to his story, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does. So we've talked about his strategic actions, his travels, and his influence on the church structure. But what about Jacob Baradaeus, the person? What do we know about his character, his lifestyle?
The sources definitely highlight his ascetic lifestyle. He lived a very simple life, full of strict practices.
Okay, like what kinds of practices?
Well, most notably, his choice to wear those ragged clothes wasn't just for disguise, it was also a symbol of his humility.
It was almost like a visual representation of his commitment, of his identification with those who were suffering.
Exactly, and let's not forget, he was constantly facing persecution from the Byzantine authority.
Oh, right. It was a very real danger for him.
His ability to evade capture was legendary. Some sources even credit him with miraculous escapes and healings.
Miracles. That's pretty amazing. Whether or not every story is historically accurate, it shows how impactful he was to people. He must have felt like a symbol of hope and resistance.
Absolutely. And today he's venerated as a saint in the Syriac Orthodox Church, with feast days dedicated to him in July and November.
Wow. A true testament to his enduring legacy. So we've touched on his travel, but I'm curious about the specifics. Do we know how extensive his journeys really were?
The sources go into some pretty remarkable detail about that. They say he rarely stayed in one place for very long, sometimes just a day or night in each town.
Wow, that's incredible. And how far would he travel each day?
They say he regularly covered 30 to 40 miles on foot. And he did this across vast regions like Syria, Egypt, Armenia, even Cappadocia and Cilicia.
30 to 40 miles a day on foot. That's an incredible feat of endurance.
It really is. And get this, he always refused to ride animals.
Really? Why was that?
He considered it a luxury, not befitting a missionary. A commitment to humility, I suppose.
It also probably gave him better access to those more remote communities, the places that were harder to reach, and maybe a bit safer from the reach of the Byzantine authorities.
Absolutely. And of course, his beggar's disguise helped him blend in and avoid unwanted attention. It's fascinating that even in death, he was still on the move, still dedicated to his mission.
Yeah, it really speaks to his unwavering commitment. So all this travel, all these interactions, he must have had a profound impact on the communities he visited, not just by ordaining leaders.
You're right. It wasn't just about passing through and moving on. He built strong, lasting connections with these communities. Well, by ordaining men from within these communities, he was empowering local leadership and making sure the church could thrive even after he was gone.
It was about building something sustainable, a church that could take root and grow.
Exactly. And the speed with which he did all this created this incredible sense of momentum and loyalty. He'd arrive, appoint leaders, and then move on before anyone could catch him.
Almost like this kind of underground railroad of faith, operating right under the noses of the authorities.
A very apt description. His actions, his disguise, his constant movement resonated with Christians facing persecution. He became the symbol of resilience and defiance.
He gave them hope, showed them that their faith could endure even in the toughest of circumstances.
Precisely. And because he traveled across such diverse regions, he had to adapt and connect with people from different cultures and backgrounds.
It's interesting. He must have had a knack for understanding and relating to people from all walks of life.
And importantly, his reliance on these communities for support and shelter built this incredible sense of mutual trust and respect. He wasn't just a distant authority figure, he was one of them, dependent on their generosity.
So he gave them leadership and guidance, and in return, they offered him protection and care, this beautiful reciprocal relationship that sustained both him and the communities he served.
It's a powerful reminder of the strength that can be found in community, in shared faith, even in the face of immense adversity. So when we consider all the aspects of his life, his efforts, his clever disguise, his constant travel, and his deep connection with the people,
It becomes clear that Jacob Baradaeus was absolutely essential to the survival and growth of the Syriac Orthodox Church. He steered them through a truly critical period in their history.
it's amazing what one person, driven by faith and an innovative approach, can achieve. And all of this is thanks to the incredible research by Andrei Mubarak.
Right, Andrei Mubarak teaching about those fascinating Aramaic roots of Christianity right from Jerusalem.
Exactly. His work is really eye-opening, and if you're interested in learning more, be sure to visit his website. It's www.twinsbiblicalacademy.com.
Will do.